I watched the interview on Joe Rogan. What's the answer to this? Like, how do we solve this problem?
Okay, so we're skipping to the end.
Yeah.
How do we solve the problem? The key to beginning to take steps to solve this problem is accountability. So the stakeholders at the top of the chain have to accept responsibility for the people in the Congo working at the bottom of their cobalt supply chains. That's just the sort of conceptual step or philosophical step that needs to be achieved. Once the stakeholders, consumer-facing tech and EV companies at the top of the chain accept responsibility for the people digging out their cobalt in the Congo in appalling and subhuman conditions, then the initiatives, efforts that need to be undertaken to candidly do the things they say they're already doing can be undertaken. So, for instance, all these companies say they have zero tolerance policies on child labor in their supply chains, that they uphold human rights standards all the way down to the mining level, that they maintain sustainability practices all the way down to the mining level, and that their supply chains, again, all the way down to the mining level, are 100% audited. Now, that all sounds good, but when you get on the ground in the Congo, you see that almost none of it is actually happening. So really, the solution is these big tech companies, the EV manufacturers, simply need to do the things they say they're already doing, but actually implement it on the ground.
How much of it do you think is sheer ignorance, like they actually believe it's happening, versus they know that they're saying one thing and doing another?
Let's be charitable and say maybe they're not fully aware of the scale and severity of human rights abuses and environmental destruction that is a consequence of how cobalt mining is taking place in the Congo. I have a pretty good feeling they're generally aware of the truth, but let's say maybe they don't fully appreciate the scale and severity of it. Well, honestly, I would say it's their job to know. I mean, they initiated this supply chain. No one said you must put cobalt in everything. No one put a gun to their head and said, please get cobalt, stick it in the batteries. So it's their job to know what's happening in their supply chains, all the way down, all the details. And so if they're not fully aware of the scale and severity, then they should know. And so the question is, how many of these companies have sent teams to the ground, as I've gone, to see where the cobalt's coming from? How many of the CEOs of these companies, all multi-billionaires many times over, in no small part because of cobalt, how many of them have spent a week of their lives to go down and see, now where exactly is my cobalt coming from? And if the answer to that is few to none, then I think that's an oversight, an omission, and a problem that has led to massive negative consequences on their part.
Are there any alternatives to cobalt?
So battery manufacturers are looking to create alternate battery chemistries. And there's a few reasons for this. Number one, there's not that much cobalt on the planet, at least that we know of right now. And with future demand projections, cobalt will probably run out 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, if not sooner. So there's a need to find alternate battery chemistries. Also, because the supply chain is so heavily concentrated in the Congo, which is a very poor, war-torn country, there's geopolitical risk, there's security risk in the nature of that supply chain. So for that reason as well, there's a desire to find alternate battery chemistries. Now, to my knowledge, there's really nothing being done in the consumer electronic world right now in a meaningful way to find alternative for smartphones, tablets, laptops, and so forth. Some EV manufacturers have started using cobalt-free batteries, primarily lithium iron phosphate batteries that don't use cobalt. You have to forfeit a few things like energy density, power, and so on, and thermal stability. But most of, if not 90+% of the EVs on the road today have cobalt in the batteries. And even if every EV manufacturer and every consumer electronic manufacturer for that matter stopped using cobalt tomorrow, that in no way repairs or accounts for the massive amount of violence and harm that's been inflicted upon the Congo, its people, and its environment for the last 12 plus years.